Time now here on Prime News Paris for a new segment where we take a closer look at all that's coming out of the White House during US President Donald Trump's first 10 days in office. France 24's Fraser Jackson, he's our correspondent, and he joins us live from Washington to break down everything for us. Good to see you, Fraser. So Trump has signed an unprecedented number of executive orders in his short time in office. How does it stack up to his predecessors?
It is an unprecedented amount, a slew of executive orders. We have a graphic that we can bring up that shows you just how quickly they have come in succession as well. Now, so far, Donald Trump has signed well over 40 executive orders, and he's repealed a lot of his predecessors, over 60 of Joe Biden's, and he's outpaced the highest executive order signers in recent history. That includes Harry Truman, Joe Biden, and even himself in his first term. So it is an unprecedented number of executive orders that we've been experiencing and dealing with here at the White House. And this is part of Donald Trump's what we call flood the zone tactic. This was something which was utilized during his first administration, but now has really come into its own. And it was really the brainchild of two of his closest advisors, one of his former advisors, Steve Bannon, and his other close advisor who's still in the White House at the moment, Stephen Miller. Ultimately, the tactic is if there are so many things to react to, then you can't react to all of them, and the outrage cannot be maintained at such a high level. So he's using that to quieten effectively his political opponents, and I must say it's kind of working at the moment, because at the moment there's no real opposition, at least on Capitol Hill or coming from anywhere else really, that is really making waves and standing out above the noise. So it is something that the Democrats so far have not really found a way of responding to and getting back to. Of course, the Democrats now without leadership after Joe Biden has gone off to his retirement, and now there is a big gap at the front of the Democratic Party, and we're waiting to see who is going to fill that void. But so far, no one really in contention.
Well, let's dig in to some of those more than 40 orders now. On Wednesday, he signed a directive regarding the infamous prison camp Guantanamo Bay. Tell us more about that.
Well, we've seen a lot of the ICE raids over the last few days, the Immigration Custom and Enforcement Agency, which has been rounding up what Donald Trump calls illegal alien criminals. And they have been rounding a lot of undocumented migrants, many of whom have been convicted of crimes, and deporting them from the country. Well, now Donald Trump wants to give a new lease of life to an infamous prison camp, Guantanamo Bay. And he announced in an executive memorandum just a couple of days, actually it was just yesterday, so much has happened in the last 24 hours. It already feels like a long time ago. It was around 3 p.m. on Wednesday that we got this EM that was released, saying that he wanted to expand Guantanamo Bay to house 30,000 migrants on that island. Now, Guantanamo Bay is actually located on the island of Cuba, but it exists in a legal grey area between the United States and Cuba. And to give you a bit of context, there's been a lot of allegations of abuse of prisoners and misuse of prisoners as well. So this detention center, which has been the focal point of Democrats for the last few years, especially since the Obama administration, trying to close it down, will now get a new lease of life. We don't know how long it's going to be until that is up and functioning. We don't know how much it's going to cost. But this is not really something new. Migrants have been housed at Guantanamo Bay over the last few decades. Currently, there are only actually 4 migrants who are currently being held there, as per the New York Times. So it is going to be a massive ramping up of this from 4 to 30,000. But I should also point out that the migrants are not housed in the same part of the camp that the terrorist suspects from 9/11 were being housed in.
And there have been orders that have made headlines, other orders including a government funding freeze and Birthright citizenship. What has been his position on those issues?
Yeah, there's been a freeze on government assistance, and this has caused a lot of headlines and also a lot of confusion. Now, Donald Trump said that the government was not going to be sending out any more funding, but he says that it didn't affect people receiving Social Security, so welfare checks from the government, and didn't affect people who were on the government's health insurance program. But it did cause a lot of confusion, especially among charities and educators as well. There was, in fact, so much pushback from all over the spectrum, really. interestingly, that Donald Trump actually rescinded that memorandum shortly afterwards. Now, Donald Trump's press secretary says that it was just one statement from the office that manages the budget of the government that was rescinded, not the actual order, and that it will go ahead. So that is still kind of unclear as to what exactly has been happening. Things have taken precedence in the last 24 hours as the United States has been dealing with its worst plane crash in 2 decades. So there are still other things going on as well, but the other question that we are looking at really closely is the question of birthright citizenship. Donald Trump's administration believes that it is unconstitutional that people who are born in the United States to undocumented migrants should get American citizenship. That's going to be a difficult case for them to argue because it is quite literally in the Constitution. It is the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. So Donald Trump is facing legal challenges over this. A judge in Seattle just a few days ago stayed this decision from going into effect until more was known about it. And ultimately, Donald Trump said he's going to appeal that. He's launched an appeal for that. And we are long and short going to see this kicked all the way up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court is going to have to rule on this as to whether this article, which is literally in the Constitution, is unconstitutional or constitutional. So some analysts believe that Donald Trump's administration has a big uphill battle to fight there, but Donald Trump sees it as a key part of his migration agenda to change that so that migrants who come here and have children will not be able to have those children be American citizens.
Fraser, great to get that wrap from you of all the flurry of activity that has been coming out of the White House during these first few days of Trump's presidency. Good to have you. Thank you so much for that.